Hello there, it's Jennifer McCreath. It's Friday night, June 1st, 2012. Just want to give a quick report and reaction to the second hour of debate in the Canadian House of Commons, Bill C-279, Act to amend the Human Rights Code, or Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code of Canada to include gender identity and gender expression. 1 hour debate. There was one Liberal speaker and 4 NDP speakers, 0 Conservative speakers. All speakers, a lot of the same messages were put forward. One, the fact that this very bill passed a previous House, but was killed because an election was called, trying to justify the fact that we're basically retracing steps that were already traced. References to the fact that bills in other jurisdictions of this nature have already passed and have been put into law in Northwest Territories, City of Toronto, Ottawa, and Vancouver. Also reference was made to other existing bills in the province of Manitoba and Ontario. One particular unique strategy by one of the NDP members was to take a look at some of the debating and quotes in the Ontario Queen's Park, where, unlike federally, that bill is sponsored by all 3 parties. And I thought it was an interesting strategy to actually quote supportive comments made by progressive conservative MPPs as a way to perhaps encourage federal conservatives to support the bill. The usual reviews of challenges. One, there were statistics about blatant, obvious violations of human rights that members of transgender, transsexual, and gender variant communities. I like how they listed all 3 of those distinctively. Talked about access to healthcare, talked about depression and mental illness. They talked about employment, housing, all the same stuff you've all heard me talk about a million times. Reference was made to a variety of non-profit LGBT groups and specific trans groups for being engaged and involved in the discussions. Most interestingly, at the end, Randall Garrison, I guess, followed up with conservatives upon the last reading and said that getting a bill passed that all members would support, or at least all parties would support, was critical. He even offered to take out the words gender expression and leave it as just gender identity. Plus, he agreed to put in a definition for gender identity. That was a bit of a bombshell dropped on me. I guess the question is, what do people think of this and what are the legal implications? Before I get into that, one other quick review. They talked about the challenges of legally dealing with an issue that's not explicitly written in law. And the fact that even if it is supposedly implied that trans people are protected, the fact that it's not spelled out makes it a lot more challenging and complex in legal situations. Excuse me. Gender identity, gender expression. Same thing? No. You want definitions? Here's one for you. Gender identity is the sense of being male, female, man, woman, both or neither, or somewhere in the gray area. It's an internalized label one puts on oneself. Gender expression is how one expresses oneself. One is an inward quality that only the individual knows for sure. The other is it's an attempt by the individual to present themselves in a certain way. And most importantly, it's, I guess, the views by others. Some people could be discriminated because they publicly out themselves and out their gender identity, while others could be either outed or perceived to be outed based on a gender presentation, rightly or wrongly. A trans woman, like myself, may attempt to present oneself in a feminine way as a way of demonstrating said gender identity of being a woman. I'm doing that in some ways. I've got lipstick on, I've got a feminine hairstyle, I'm wearing wearing a pink nightie, of all things. See, I can take this wig off. There you go. We've done this before on camera. There's a male haircut now. Gender expression. Some might say, well, that's a masculine presentation. I could say, no, I'm trying to be Britney Spears. I'm trying to be feminine here. Bottom line, when you discriminate against another person, it's probably based on not necessarily fact or reality, but it's based on perception. They say perception is reality. If I'm going to discriminate against you because I have an issue with your sex or your gender, it's based probably on my perception of you, not necessarily because I know what's deep inside of your brain. I think there's a serious risk here if we do not have both gender identity and gender expression explicitly listed. We open the risk that we are going to leave certain people out of this protection. One particular group of people that might be affected would be those who do not identify as transsexual or transgender, meaning people who purposely go out of their way to live full-time in some sort of a gender role opposite of the gender role typically assigned with one's birth sex. If you're a part-time cross-dresser, if you're a drag entertainer, you might have no issues with your gender identity, but you express yourself using different genders depending on the time and the situation. Well, you take that away, you eliminate those people. How about me? I'm kind of unique. I've completed sex transition, born male. I'm now female, physically and legally. The discrimination I know I faced, is it because of the way I present my gender? Or is it based on an understanding of the history of my sex? Is it a combination of both? It's an interesting thing to consider. The spirit of putting this act, or the amendment, the bill, in place, to me it defeats the purpose. If you don't put gender identity and gender expression in the paperwork, are you really adding value, or are you simply saying we still don't give trans community full recognition and protection? We'll protect you for yourself, but we're not going to protect you from the perception of others. I appreciate the work that everyone's doing on this, but Mr. Garrison, I think you've got it wrong. I think you've received some bad advice. You referenced, or one of your colleagues referenced, a lot of organizations, most of which are in Toronto. You referenced some gay lesbian organizations. Reach out to other Canadians. Newfoundland's a lot different than Toronto, and if you come and talk to me about my experience as a trans person here, there are others here. I'm probably the most out trans person in Newfoundland, but there are several others here. I'd love to have you and Mr. Morin and all your folks get in touch with us, find out how discrimination affects trans Newfoundlanders. Healthcare, let's talk about that briefly. The word CAMH is notorious in terms of a gatekeeping entity for money for surgeries. Torontonians seem okay with that because CAMH is just down the street and around the corner, but if you live in Newfoundland or live somewhere far off in Canada, asking a trans person to travel to CAMH, it's financially, physically, logistically unnecessary, and it's an impediment to health. More importantly, I went the provincial human rights route over that issue and lost. I'm out $20,000 because I had to pay for my own health care that was recommended by my Newfoundland doctors. Yeah, you want definitions? We can give you definitions, but please don't take words out. Don't take expression out. It's very important. Unlike all those other things in the Human Rights Act, it's an identifiable thing. Your sex can be legal or biological. Your race, the color of your skin. I don't think there's any debating the color of one person's skin. But when you're talking about gender identity and gender expression, it's not so black and white. We're talking about a gray area here. in both ways. One might be unsure of their own gender identity, and the way one presents said gender expression could be very different. Just because one presents gender in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's congruent with their gender identity. And much like sex and gender are independently exclusive, gender identity and gender expression are independently exclusive. Both are factors in discrimination faced by transsexual, transgender, gender variant individuals. I think this can be done. If both words can make it into the provincial codes, there's no reason to exclude it from a Canadian code. Let's stay on this issue. Let's work with all members of the House of Commons. I think we can convince them that gender expression needs to be in this code, and I hope I can convince you, all of you people watching this video, quite frankly. Anyways, I've rambled on for 11 minutes. I'm going to send this off. info@jennifermccreath.com for if you want to get in touch with me privately. You can post comments on the YouTube site here. Let's keep the dialogue moving. I'm ultimately very happy that trans issues are finally literally on the table in government and in the community and all over the place. And yeah, let's not compromise our values and our morals. We need the protection. We need the full protection. And let's not stop until we get everything. Thank you, everyone.